Okay, we're in.
We are back in for the Beyond Condition podcast, and today is a super cool subject which we both have spoken about before on the pods, but it'd be really nice to dedicate a whole session to it, because I think in particular for females, but males as well, struggling with weight gain in an off season or off the back of a show is tough. It's something that, especially for first timers, and we do have a lot of first timers that listen, it's a real mind warp, isn't it?
It is. It's a funny thing because off-season weight gain, there's a couple, right? There's like, to kind of start, I think it's good to just talk about it in two different camps. You've got off-season weight gain, which might not be voluntary, e.g. maybe you've done this for the first time, you come off stage, you just start eating, and you've maybe just not got a structured plan coming out of it. So you gain weight very quick, and that can be the mind warp of that kind of putting on quite a lot quite quickly, and then maybe going into a bit of a regret mode, or certainly kind of not managing it very well. And then there's like the other camp, which is there's kind of an accepted logic that in order to sort of gain any significant amount of muscle in an off season, you need to be in optimal weight, and you need to gain some weight and body fat in order to do that. So there's like two camps, I think, when we're talking about off-season weight gain.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why it's so important, if you can work with a coach in all phases, for you to understand before you go particularly into that post-show phase, what the weight gain can look like, talk about it, how it's going to feel, and your coach can support you through that. If you do it alone, that's when, the first scenario that you spoke about, a lot of weight gain going on from potentially rebounding after a prep, it's potentially going to be negative, because you then are in a spot where you don't know what to do with the weight gain. And if you haven't got a coach, it's like, is this right? Should I be gaining weight? How much weight should I gain? And you feel, everyone calls it fluffy, don't they? But you just feel really uncomfortable compared to being at that lean stage.
Yeah, like I think we've sort of spoken on pods before where like you've been so institutionalized for so long, gunning for a certain lean body mass and us to look a certain way, that you've become quite used to seeing your body small, tight. You can see all the condition, you can see the lines. And so for anybody, especially at the beginning of your journey, and especially for females, weight gain can be quite distressing. I always give the visualization to my clients post-show about your body is going to change, but it takes about 4 or 5 weeks for your mind to catch up with the look of the body. So it's like, if you imagine like a car carrying that's got a can attached to it and it's dragging it behind it. That's why
what do
I mean, it's like the car is like gunning for this body fat because it loves it and it's happy and it needs it to retain, to get back to hormonal health, to feel good, to look good, to push some weight, to regain all the optimal bodily functions. But your mind is not ready for the change, and so it's like dragging this psychological impact of putting on body fat along 20 steps behind, and it's trying to find a way of managing that really, really well. And I think guys kind of have it quite, I don't want to say easy, but in sort of, for most guys, adding extra weight in off season is not usually something they lose much sleep over. Like they're quite game to go gunning for it. They want to just get that body weight back on. And I often think that guys, like especially Andrew, he puts on quite a bit of weight after show and he still looks muscular. He still looks big. He still looks great. Whereas for some of us females, it can be quite uncomfortable and distressing, and you can feel a bit watery, bloated. And we just, especially for natural females, we just don't hold the same kind of full muscular look when we add body fat on. We just don't. We're childbearing animals,
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned there about pushing more weight, and that's definitely something you've mentioned it before, focus on in the gaining weight phase, performance in the gym, because that's such a good thing to keep you motivated to potentially gain the muscle, but also the fat that comes with that, and feel like it's beneficial rather than just thinking, oh, I look really fat, I feel really fat. You can do so much more, you can perform more, and also those periods where you can actually create memories and be much more present than potentially in a prep.
100%. And I think there's got to be like a healthy psychology with gaining the weight and what it represents and what you're going to do with that, and also reminding ourselves that bodybuilding is an extreme sport. We're going to come back to that. point, and that it's not normal in the grand scheme. You know,
Yeah,
it's not normal, and we need to remind ourselves what a healthy female body looks like, and that most of the time, even in your off season, you're still actually somebody that a lot of females will look across the gym and go, oh my God, I want to look like them, even in your off season. And I think there's this kind of misconception that you put all this weight on and then you just look crap and you don't look like anything and you look like you've gone backward. And it's not the case at all. I think bodybuilding does warp our mind a little bit, in the sense that we start to pitch ourselves against the lean bodies, but forget that actually where we are and the muscle we've built and how we look in our off seasons is also something to want to attain. It's an amazing look.
Yeah.
It's an empowering look. It's a strong, fierce female pushing some weight and owning it in the gym. And we need to switch the mindset from the lean journey to the now fit, healthy, happy, hormone enjoying food for the right reasons mindset.
Yeah, because of course in a prep, when you're getting leaner, you get used to, I always find when I come out of a prep and into the off season, I've got used to feeling pretty shit most days, because you're ticking the boxes, you're doing everything you can, you're sticking to the plan, and then 4-6 weeks out from a show, you're like, off the back of a show, oh, I actually feel quite good here. How did I cope when I was at the tail end of my prep? How was I even functioning? And you look back and you think, blimey, I was quite neurotic. I was very focused on that goal. And actually, when you do start to feel better, you think, okay, there's that element of it being an extreme sport, and potentially that isn't good for me, because things start shutting down, especially for females, hormones, things like your menstrual cycle, which we mentioned before. All of these things can start to shut down, and you sort of reside yourself to the fact that that's quite normal, because we're chasing that lean physique, which it's not optimal to stay at that stage for long periods of time, but you just get so tunnel visioned.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think, there's a lot of terms that fly around in the industry about the transition off the back of a prep into a gaining phase. We can have, right, we're going into a bulk. Okay, we're going into maintenance phase. Okay, we're going into just, life phase, or off season, obviously, which is what we're talking about here. And we forget, again, going back to that point, we forget that these are terms that we associate still with bodybuilding. So you're not detaching yourself at all from the bodybuilding process, which can be unhealthy, because you still sort of, you're always thinking about your aesthetic, which is not always healthy. And of course, I think we could all probably say that, like, vanity and aesthetic is probably the reason why we all got into bodybuilding in the first place. We want to look good, we want to feel good, we want to look muscular, we want to look pumped, we want to look all these sorts of things. But it's getting the balance right with that, because there is a point in your off season where you're going to have to just be comfortable being a bit bigger, being fuller, being kind of curvy, being like, not just focusing on your body the whole time, which is why I also sort of say to people is get into the gym, get some nice big bag t-shirts, get some jumpers, just get comfortable, and don't fixate on what you look like during this exit out of the phase. And I suppose coming back to that with the terminologies, every coach is different with how they use their terminology. Those of you who know me very, very well know that I despise the word bulk for females.
I remember that from previous sessions.
I think it's an extremely negative word for describing what could be a very healthy exit to a good level of body fat. That's not over the top. We do not need to be in such a giant calorie surplus that we are holding excess amounts of body weight. We need to be, I think it's roughly just over maintenance calories to be in enough of a surplus to start gaining good tissue. We have these sort of coaches in the industry and generally that it's accepted to just be like, yeah, I'm bulking, I'm on my bulk. And I'm like, well, what does that actually mean? Because bulking for a purpose of gaining a ton of muscle, you don't need to necessarily be in such a humongous surplus that you're then counteracting that muscle, that sort of size that you're putting on with also a ton of fat, which is going to make it 10 times harder the next time you come around to doing a prep to take that off. And remember, I'm going on a rant here, but remember that every fat cell you build, you don't get rid of. So the more fat you actually put on, you never lose the ability then to regain that. And I think there's got to be a level of understanding of what are you trying to achieve in your off season, not to the detriment of just walking around with a ton of extra fat, feeling uncomfortable. And then you very quickly can get warped by what is, when looking at yourself bigger in the mirror, you think that the fat is muscle when it's not. Mm. So you've got to be careful there. And I always recommend a sort of a lean phase out of the, obviously get your body fat up to optimal as soon as possible, but to keep within a certain composition that you can see what you're doing with the frame, not just get absolutely massive for the sake of it. I don't know what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, exactly the same. I mean, definitely from when I first started out, because I've done various preps now, it was keeping it less of a gaining phase, you know, looking at potentially, like we've mentioned before, 6 to 8 kilos. Then when I've gone from the transition of getting pro cards and then climbing up the ranks, as it were, it then means my off seasons, I have gained more body weight in the off season, but like you say there, it's been for a reason, and there's been a structured approach to it. The calories haven't just flown up, they've gone, you know, up to maintenance and then slowly gone into a surplus, and it's monitored, you know, and there is options for people to go into a mini cut if they were going to do a longer off season. You know, I personally, again, I don't know about you, but I quite like the fact of committing to a growth phase and seeing it out if you can. If, you know, things come up and it is going to be a longer period of time, maybe there is opportunities to tidy up a little bit, but you know, depending on what your goals are and what your aspirations are within your competitive career, you need to then, you know, speak with your coach, or, you know, have a plan as to where that weight gain may go. But it's definitely aesthetic based, isn't it? You know, that's why there's a need for the check-in photos, and sometimes weight on the scales, you might be more, but you look better, or, you know, it's a continual process. And I don't think there's a shelf life as such as to the weight gain. It's definitely individual, but it's not as simple as it looks. Like you say, you need to monitor that throughout the whole time if you can.
Yeah, because you see a lot of people, like especially females in the industry, like, oh, I'm 10 kilos over stage weight and look at my composition. And I'm looking at some of these. I saw one last week, you know, let's see, October, November, December, January, February, March, maybe 5-6 months off the stage, 10-12 kilos of fat of weight gained, and then a picture of before when they've come off, you know, stage maybe a month into now. And I'm looking at the frame and I'm going, no, that's not. That's just not. And there's just a lot of nonsense. And a lot of people, I think, speaking, you know, putting up pictures saying, look how much weight I've put on. And I just kind of think that it's very misleading, because if you know anything about this and you look at a body, you can kind of guesstimate how much body weight or how much weight is between two photographs. And you'd have to be doing a lot of other nefarious things to be kind of, I think, in a slightly higher realm of body weight and to say, right, okay, this is all muscle or whatever else. Because you see a lot of that, don't you? Like, I've gained 4 kilos of muscle in 4 months. No.
Can't quantify that. You know, unless you're paying for DEXA scans every month or whatever it is, you know, and that's a lot of confusion as well about body weight. You know, people using scales that say how much fat you've got, how much muscle you've got. You know, a lot of the, well, I'd arguably say all of them don't measure that in the way that you need to be specific and actually, you know, quantify your muscle gain against your fat gain. You know, it's looking at the physique, isn't it?
100%. And like you just mentioned and touched on there, everything is relative to the frame, the bone density of the frame, how heavy the person is, how much, you know, the person's maintenance calories are, and where they sit at maintenance. You know, in my very first year when I got off stage, I did the rookie hour that most people do. You know, you go gung-ho on the food. At that point in time, I'd met a new guy in my life. I was head over heels. We were going out every night. We were smashing the food like no tomorrow. And I put 12 kilos on in about, no joke, in about 4 weeks. And I was swollen. I was uncomfortable. I was horribly overweight. I got overweight quite quickly. And I know that wasn't healthy for me. And I've never allowed that to ever happen again. For me, comfortably. 6-7 kilos over my stage weight is a pretty healthy place to be. In my early years, maybe a wee bit more just to help with muscle growth, but I've never seen the need for somebody to be anywhere near kind of the 10-12 kilo mark over their stage weight, certainly not with the clients I've worked with, in order to accrue good, decent tissue. Like we go back to saying, as long as you get to the maintenance, whatever that individual's maintenance is, and then you see the response rate at maintenance, maybe push it a little bit more, and you keep pushing until you see, if you can keep pushing food up and they keep the same weight, great. The more food you can get in, the better, because you know that more food equates to more energy, more obviously ability to recover, to push, all these sorts of things. And then you'll find at some point the food will reach a ceiling, and then it'll tip and they'll start gaining weight. And that's about, where you sort of need to be. You find maintenance, push it a bit higher, and then once the scales start to stabilize and you're happy, but or if they start to go up too high, you bring it back a little bit, and that's about where you need to be. And for most females, that can be anywhere between 5 to 8 to possibly 10 if needed kilos off stage, in my experience as a coach. But this whole sort of 20 odd kilos off stage that you need to be in a calorie surplus, I'd like to see some evidence that that's necessary. I've just not seen any that we need to be in that place at all.
Yeah, I mean, also there's a consideration as well, particularly first timers. For me, when I did my first couple of seasons, I got so shredded that I was almost too shredded for bikini. And then following on from that, the seasons where I started to become more successful, my stage weight was much higher. So I gained a good amount of weight. I think my first one, I gained maybe 15 kilos. But then when I came back down, I was like 6 or 7 kilos over my stage weight. So when I looked at it like that, it was almost like, I'd gained quite a lot of weight. But then when I came back down, I looked better and I was more competitive. So again, completely individual to the person and what they've done before. If it's for first timers, my first 2 or 3 preps, it was just, looking to gain that 6 to 8 kilos. I didn't go over that. So also, reflecting back on your performance, where you need to grow, what areas you need to work on, and looking at that to then plan your off season is going to be a really good tool to looking at the best weight gain possible for you.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's just sort of a big part people forget. Like, you're on stage, right? Once, let's say you do 4 shows in a season, 4 days of the 4 days of the year. For the rest of the time, you're doing the prep, right? And then when you come away from that, you're not doing prep. So there's this question: how do you want to feel in your body the rest of the days of the year? Life body, like, how do you want to feel in your skin? And I had a client a couple of weeks ago in her check-in. She said, right, we've hit this point. If I was to say a weight or a look that I'd want to hold in my off season, this is it.
Yeah.
And I marked it. We spoke about that. We said, right, that's really, really good data to have, because we know where her set point is coming off the back of a prep and where she wants to sort of be, where we can take her weight back up, and we can sort of play with that and see where she's at. So I think it's really important that every individual competitor thinks about how they want to be the other 360 or 350 days of the year that they're not competing. For me, I like to feel full, healthy. I like to push hard, but I like to retain a little bit of shape to my physique. I've never wanted to go big, bulky, do all of that. But now I actually find that the majority of women I speak to who are in the competitive field, they don't want to feel like that either. So when your coach, or if a coach is saying to you, right, we need to go this amount of weight, or maybe you're quarter of the way through, say your coach has told you to go in a bulk or whatever, maybe you're just a bit quarter of the way through it and you feel really uncomfortable in your skin. There is sort of a point where, how do I sort of put it? It's not that you're going to question your coach and go like, what the hell, and everything else. It's that you've got a responsibility to say like, okay, I'm happy where I am. And I want, and then some more explanation as to why you would need to push any further. Because trust me, like, going the opposite side of the scale of putting on too much your training becomes actually sluggish. Your energy becomes sluggish. You don't become optimal at all. You actually are carrying around a ton more weight, trying to then improve your cardiovascular fitness in a really heavy body. So there's pros and cons to the weight gain, and of course knowing what that is, and of course for your class and what you're trying to do. You know, if you're a bikini competitor, then progressing into the figure classes, there may be a need for a slightly different approach. Yeah. If you are a figure competitor going into the bodybuilding classes, there might be
you might need to gain quite a lot.
Yeah. So it's just like, I suppose it's like knowing it's like something we always say, asking your coach lots of questions, understanding what a bulk actually means, or what an off-season means. What approach does your coach take? I use sort of a lean building approach where they keep nice composition, but they can see the improvements, and we really make sure that we can see the improvements. And if we get too fluffy, we pull back a little bit at points, maybe do a bit of a mini cut, or just, you know, just brush up a little bit just to improve the composition so that the cardiovascular fitness is good. All of that sort of thing.
Helps keep your mind in the game, doesn't it? Because if you are feeling quite uncomfortable, that's where a mini cut can, and like I say, like a longer off season, you know, I know people that are like Rimini, who we spoke about last time we moved together. She's going up to figure from bikini, so she's pushing up higher than she maybe would have if she stuck in bikini, because it's a completely different category and a completely different division, and she's going to need to bring more muscle mass. So it makes much more sense, you know, for me, going from amateur to pro, there's that big difference in the muscle that you need to present on stage. And that's where, like you say, speaking with your coach, but it's just being honest and transparent. And if you have conversations with your coach, or you don't want to, then potentially it's looking at a different coach, or, you know, a different avenue, because you shouldn't feel uncomfortable to speak about your coach about, you know, things like weight gain, because that is such a big subject, especially for, like you say, females and first timers.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
Oh, it is really hard. And I think, you know, if I was to look at just like the mechanics of off season and like the diet, the training, and what that looks like, you know, coming back off stage is an opportunity for lots of good nutrients to be put back into the diet, lots of good healthy fats, lots of good healthy carbohydrates, loads of good veg, some treats here or there, as I kind of call it with my guys, clean weeks, healthy treats at the weekend, you know, things like that, so that we are topping things up, but we're coming away from just maybe the monotonous, particularly in the end of the diet, the monotony of just the same foods all the time, and then breaking that up with fibrous food, loads of good veggies, just loads of really good healthy things that, you know, they maybe are craving, you know, like a bagel, some cereals, some nice things that they can start to really enjoy. And then we think about diversity, volume, and progressing their palate, recipes, healthy meals, thinking about cooking again, you know, getting involved in like the things they enjoy, and being a bit more intuitive with the foods they enjoy, and listening really well to the body and what it likes, because there is a psychological appreciation to nice food, and that's a good thing as well. And then the training element is obviously to then think about reduction of, maybe if you've been doing a lot of cardio, to start pulling back on that, and to start thinking about the specific programming to ensure that the body is going to grow effectively for whatever improvements you need to make, or whatever class division you're going to go into. And yeah, you should by that point have a lot of data to go by to know exactly what you need to do, and then applying that to some very intense, hard, focused training that's going to allow you to get the results that you want.
Yeah. And for anyone that, we're talking about maintenance phases as well, for anyone that doesn't know much about that, it's harder to find your maintenance if you're coming off the back of the first prep, if you just started with a coach for the prep. If you've, you know, done it like we have for a number of years, you can play around with different calories, different training to work out what your maintenance is, and then you can then resort back to that when you come out of a show. You can go up to maintenance quite quickly, and then you can plan your surplus, as it were. If you're coming off the back of a show and you've only ever known a prep and losing weight, it might take a bit of time to find that maintenance, and it's working with someone to try and work that out. And then, like you said earlier about getting data, it's, you know, my maintenance calories have changed over the years of doing it, because, you know, you'll probably relate here as well. The more you do it, the more you can hold your composition as well.
Yeah,
like, especially the growth phase. You know, my first off season, I just literally felt, you know, humongous straight away, because I wasn't used to carrying extra weight. And then once I'd done it a few times, I got my head around it, I could understand what a growth phase is for, and then I could focus on the different things that are coming from that change in mindset when you go into that phase. But definitely, you know, working out maintenance off the back of your first prep, and then using that as data when you then go into, you know, another prep and come off the back of that, you can establish that much quicker than. It's sometimes a little bit of guesswork, isn't it, when you first do a prep?
Yeah, 100%. It is a lot of guesswork. And I think that's the beauty of staying with a coach for a relative amount of time as well. Because when you come off the back of stage, the coach has got to know your body's response so well. And most likely, like, I'm already thinking about my females off seasons now, because I just know how some of them may respond and how some of them won't. Just short, you know, just because of the information I've got from some people are extremely hard, like what I call hard fat loss losers, you know what I mean, like really, really challenging, and some are like, right, it comes off like that, and I have to keep feeding them. So yeah, this is the benefit of having all of that relationship building with a coach through preps, through off seasons. And some of my best clients, I'm going to call them my best clients, are the ones that I've been with for so long, you know, because I have literally been able to get to know them and see their bodies, you know, change, and really learn what they respond well to. And there is something to be said for that. Just like anything, it's you're the teacher of sort of what you're doing, and you can see the person change. So then the feedback is giving you more and more and more ability to guide and mold that person to make sure that they can become the best versions of themselves. So yeah, it is trial and error. And a lot of this is like, we always talk about this, but the physical, if you just chop your head off for a second, right? Your body wants to gain the weight. It needs to, for all of the things we've stated. But when we put the mind back on, a lot of this is as much coach guiding psychologically, helping with the post-show psychology of changing shape, helping of how to deal with reduction in the level of activity you're doing, you know, from 5 or 6 days a week, maybe 2 times a day in a gym, to 4 times training a week, to once in a gym. It's as much about helping them shift the mindset into this much less arduous go every minute of every single day than it is to, you know, the body will just do, whereas the mindset is really the thing that we struggle with. And it's being patient and being kind to yourself, and not. So we often see post-show a lot of people, you know, guilt cardioing, trying to make up for maybe things that they've eaten and they feel terrible about it, and seeing their body change and then kind of really beating themselves up for the way they look. So a lot of this is finding strategies to switch the mindset from, I'm not competing now, I'm going to become this strong, powerful woman in the gym, optimal, my hormones are banging, my strength is going through the roof, I feel good. And you know what? It's planting the seed of I look good every single day. And it's finding that flow with strength rather than flow with condition.
Yeah, because it is, for a prep, you do need to get into that tunnel vision of chasing a certain physique. And you know, that's normal for us to do that. A lot of people that bodybuild will be overachievers, people that like pressure, people that like a challenge. And it's trying to funnel those energies into a different phase. You know, it's extreme in both angles. There's different things that contribute to prep or an off season that are going to make an extreme sport. And, you know, also off the back of a show, I've been there where, because I've had more food, you know, after the show, I've had a meal out or whatever, and I've maybe been for breakfast the next day, I suddenly think that I'm completely normal again. And I go into the gym and expect a lot from myself. And it's like, you competed yesterday, chill out, you know, enjoy it. Try and, you know, line up some experiences if you want to with your family that have supported you, your friends that have supported you through your prep, and, you know, pick out things that you actually want to do. Again, with like the guilt cardio, the guilt food, if you end up doing things that you know, going to restaurants you don't really like and having foods you don't really like, that can then lead to having more guilt because you've actually eaten something you didn't even want to in the first place, just because the people wanted to. So there's an element of communication there as well. You know, what do you want to get off the back of a show? What memories do you want to create? And have conversations with those around you and be transparent and honest. And I've definitely learned that doing that, it lends itself so much better to me. You know, if I've been somewhere in an off season, I've really loved the food, if I then go back there with a family member or a friend or whatever it may be, I'm like, oh, I tried this last time, it was really nice, do you want to try it? And it helps you feel a bit more comfortable with the elements of, you know, that aren't in a prep, those things where you don't really go off plan meals and things like this, to try and incorporate them again. And I think it's, you know, it is a slow process. You're not going to just be able to switch that off and go into having meals all the time. I mean, you probably could, but it doesn't sit well psychologically generally if you've just done a stage prep.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a point there to be made with when you've been, so say, maybe not so much, well, it depends on a class, I suppose, but just this is a thing for everyone. When you do something as extreme as bodybuilding and you take your body to the realms of low body fat that it's never been before, and then you start to introduce all the foods back in, it can sometimes take a period of months in some people's scenarios, definitely in mine, and I'll explain that in a sec. But for your body to adjust to the weight gain, and I mean that in the sense that you might bloat quite a bit for a while, you might hold a lot of water retention for quite a while, just the length of time it might take for your hormones to readjust. So your skin, hair, nails might take a little bit to come back to kind of the way they are. I've certainly noticed this in the natural realms with some of my girls and with me. When I've gone to the extreme and I get very, very lean, in my last prep, 2019, I came off the stage and it really wasn't, that was in October. It really wasn't until about the January, February, if I'm honest, that I was fully back to being like, my weight wasn't bloated. It was just weight. I was just comfortable. My skin was good. I could, you know, suck my tummy in and feel really tight and nice and sort of, you know, fullness in my tissue, but not filmy or watery or bloated in that kind of sense. And so for some people it can be very quick, they can adjust very quickly. For some people it can take quite a long time, because your body has been in such a low body fat state for such a long time. It's again that readjustment phase. So don't be surprised for some people that it can take a longer period of time to get back to that just normal walking about with your, you know, normal level of weight and feel totally okay.
Yeah, because you say about bloating as well. I noticed, not so much in my recent years, but before, if I went into foods that I haven't had, like for, you know, up to weeks, you know, I couldn't go to the toilet normally and all of these things, because my body's like, what the hell are you doing? And that makes me think of as well, you know, in the bikini class in particular, I don't know, you may be able to shed some light in figure as well, where there's a lot of backstage behavior that contributes to you thinking that you want certain foods. So, you know, people put in lots of foods out there, bags, you know, I've mentioned it when we first started doing our YouTube, where I went to a show once and there was a couple of girls that had the massive cinema pick a mix things full up. You know, they had donuts, Reese's, all of these things coming out there, this little backpack, and I'm thinking, where is this food ending? Like, and then all they were talking about was what they wanted to do after the show, not I'm going to do my best on the day, I'm going to, you know, perform to my best ability, I want to win this show, I want to place, or whatever the aspiration is. It was, what am I going to eat after the show? And that then breeds that, you know, potential binge eating, that potential mind warp of, you know, feeling really, really guilty about what you've had, rather than thinking, okay, I'm going to have a little something when I get off stage, maybe, you know, go for a meal that evening. But you can choose. It's so easy now to, you know, why not go to something like a Turkish restaurant and have rice, chicken and some char grilled veggies that they've made with maybe some different oils, rather than your chicken and rice that you have at home with broccoli. You know, integrate things, you know, do it slowly, enjoy it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I do love prep foods. It's just I like more volume if I've got the choice.
Yeah, and I mean, I think anybody who's into fitness likes to eat healthy. You know, I think some people come into competing and they've got no real background in maybe eating healthy, good food, right? And then they start doing bodybuilding and they get a taste for good, healthy food. And then when you come off the back of it, you're like, oh, going back to just your pizzas and your chicken nuggets and your chips or your ready cooked meals actually don't taste that great anymore. You know, like you suddenly realize, okay, actually I'd much prefer whole foods because they taste better, they're more filling, I get a lot more from them, they're more fibrous, they help my digestion, they help me feel good, they help me feel more energized. And I think one of the positives about bodybuilding, if you know you've got quite a varied diet, is it teaches you good nutrition. And then that becomes more prolific, and so it can be a good skill, because once you've got off the stage, you start to prioritize these foods in a lot higher quantities, and there's nothing wrong with still eating the same things, more of them, and just adding nice things here or there, you know. And yeah, I think you just become, in your early days of competing, or certainly, you know, if you're somebody who has maybe not got a nutritional basis for eating well, you can often kind of get consumed with the, you know, the cookie box things and the what's going on Instagram and hoarding cupcake pictures, like God knows what. Yeah, totally. And then it all seems all great, and then you come off stage and you have a few of these things and you just think, actually no, like you don't want the volume that you maybe thought you would. You know, some people might, but absolutely, you know, there is a danger there to fall into patterns of dysfunctional eating.
Yeah.
Post-show week, I mean, you can go and listen to the post-show one, guys, but there is an ghrelin effect will take over when you're very low body fat, because it is starved of certain things, and the body is an amazing mechanical machine. It needs to be at an optimal level to survive. So if it gets a taste of something, it's going to switch those hormones on, and it's going to say to body more. And that's when the balance can get tipped very quickly if you've not got that structure and plan. Yeah. And then for people who are literally in the off season right now, you need to have common sense about the amount of higher fatty, sugary things that are within that plan as well, because you can gain a lot of weight quite quickly from very low nutritionally dense foods, and they don't do anything for you. They just add weight to the frame from a fat perspective and don't actually help fuel performance. So we have to be mindful in the off season of a good balance of the nice things versus the good stuff.
Yeah, and because in my last off season, part of it was intuitive, which when I was working with Stephen, I was quite I don't know what the best word would be, but I didn't really want to go down that route initially, because I do enjoy tracking. I love, you know, having the food to have and what have you. And because of going through the divorce and various things around that, he was quite acutely aware that if I was to be tracking, training, moving house, getting divorced, if I did all of those things, that could become quite a big stressor. So I went into the intuitive side of things, but I used what I know from being a bodybuilder, and I would do, basically I would have, you know, protein servings throughout the day with some veggies and keep the fiber up, keep my macros in, that type of thing. And then I would go for an evening meal, or if I was at home, I'd have, you know, foods that I enjoy, like, you know, it's quite novel, but granola and milk, things like that, you know, okay, they're a bit more alongside the processed side of things, but, you know, you've got some whole grains in there, you've got various other things in there that don't make it completely opposite to what I'm used to having. And that sat really well. And I maintained, you know, a higher weight for probably 8 weeks, where I didn't really, I stuck between, you know, a weight goal, and I stayed there and I still felt quite good. So there's different ways of doing it depending on where the lifestyle leads. And, you know, it's like when you go on holiday, you don't necessarily need to have the all you can eat buffet 3 to 4 times a day. You can have a leaner breakfast, you know, have some of your ham and eggs or whatever, you know. If you're anything like me, take the yolks out of the boiled eggs and just eat the egg whites. But, you know, you can pull it back a little bit in those periods where you're maybe not tracking, but then enjoy the bigger food, you know, train like you normally would, do your steps like you normally would, and try and keep an eye on your weight gain, keep things as tidy as you can, with the, you know, the mindset of I'm still doing what I'd normally do, having my protein every 2 to 5 hours, still keeping my hydration up, all of these things. But you know, just take the edge off a little bit, because we're all going to want to go on holidays and things, you know, and have time away from measuring your foods. And like we've said before, you do start to build, and you can eyeball things. You can say, right, that's probably got about that much protein. I want to have 2 or 3 fruits or veggies with this meal. I want to have some rice or potatoes or whatever it is. But then if you do get invited to things that are going to be, you know, your higher saturated foods, things that you're not used to, just have a think about it first and do what sits right for you and what your goals are in that phase.
Yeah, exactly. If you're with a coach, it's having that a bit of a good guidance and structure around it, but also being sensible and mindful within your own body and your own mind. With, like you say, if you're out and about, you're in off season, for goodness sake, enjoy it. It's life. But at the same time, you know that if you have a really high calorie Saturday, then you might just be a bit more mindful on the Sunday or the Monday. You know what I mean? But definitely, you know, everyone's independent. I've had clients who've come off and we've gone into a good sort of maintenance phase of not too dissimilar from the back end of prep for the first couple of weeks, but bumping up a little bit more. Then we introduce more varied foods when they're psychologically able to do it. Some of my clients like to track for the first little while, and then we have a period of non-tracking just when they're happy to then broach into that non-tracking phase, so that then they can choose some foods and they're in a good place to do so. Sometimes that's challenging straight after stage. I find the non-tracking thing, I think people can get quite anxious about that at first.
Because I had exactly the same. You know, straight away it's like, I like that control in my life. I like tracking. You know, I was able to see the benefits of it the more I did it, and I can understand the stresses in, like you say, life. You know, sometimes bodybuilding can't be your absolute focus at all times, and that's hard even saying it, because I want it to be my focus all the time. But it's just trying to, you know, enjoy that element of life. And, you know, if you do get opportunities to go away and enjoy holidays and you are in off season, try and enjoy it.
The likelihood is, right, if you have too much restriction in your off season, and say you're somebody who wants to go back and do this again, and you restrict yourself too much, you're going to absolutely regret it when you come back around to contest prep, because you're prolonging a prep through an off season also by having the rigidity around your mindset. There are some people who respond really well to complete routine, but I'll be honest, you know, that's a very rare thing to come by in the majority of clients that want to still have the absolute rigidity of a contest prep during their just lifestyle phase, off-season phase. It's very rare, unless I've got somebody at extreme high level or somebody who is like really, really routine based. You know, I've got a couple of guys who are kind of in jobs like, I've got one in the army who I know very well, who's literally like, just give me chicken rice every day, I'm happy. And I've got a police officer who's the same. You know, their job needs it easy, quick, on the go. Let's just keep it simple. So it does really depend. Everybody is, it's like everything. Everyone is so individualized, and that's why having a coach who is extremely aware of who you are as a person, what your world looks like, you know, what your family life looks like, what your work pattern, shift work, whether it's shift work 9 to 5, whatever it is, looks like. Do you need to take the kids to school every day? Do you not? When do you train? Is it morning? Is it night? How's your sleep patterns? Do you, around that time in the month, have humongous pendulum swings? Because a lot of females do, and I know how to manage those sorts of things. So everybody's so different and food is connected with these things. Very much so. You know, how you eat in different areas of your world, it's so interconnected. And this is where the kind of mapping out somebody's off season for their weight, for how they eat, for what that looks like in their world is so vital to help people keep some kind of balance and routine to it all.
And tying in those social occasions and things like going away, you know, there's no problem with being able to do that. And also, the holiday I just went on before starting prep, it timed really well, because the day after we got back, I went into prep and I was able to switch that, well, flick the switch as we might call it. But, you know, that would have been a lot harder, like off the, you know, on the opposite end of the spectrum where you said going from a prep to not tracking, that would be really hard. And I can definitely say it's the first time that I've gone on holiday, and Matt and I always talk about this, like I didn't feel guilty for having more food. I didn't feel the need to, like, sometimes I think, right, I've got to go and do 2 hours on the cross trainer because I've had a couple of meals today. And that again comes with experience and trying to understand how you are as a person, working with your coach to understand that, you know, if you're someone that has these tendencies, then build plans into off-season phases. You know, even in prep, you can do certain things that are going to facilitate you being able to execute your plan. The guilt thing is just such a drain on your, you know, everyday life. It's so hard to, I think, sometimes notice it, and also trying to deal with those emotions and the energies that get taken if you're not able to go between different phases, and just be a bit kinder to yourself, especially in this off-season phase, and gaining weight, having more food, having potentially a better quality of life, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Life is short. You've got to experience life. Bodybuilding is a fun and amazing journey. It's an incredible experience. But, you know, unless you're the tiny percentile of people who are going to make it to that top line, don't take it so seriously that you actually start to lose sight of, you know, the bigger picture, which is, it's something you do. It's not who you are. And I think that that's something that's really, really important. I often talk about that. Bodybuilding is something I do. It's not, you know, it's not who I am fully. And the rest of the time, I'm a partner, I'm a friend, I'm a stepmom, I'm, you know, a girl like that loves to do lots of different things. And that includes going out and experiencing lovely cuisine, experiencing fun times with my mates, you know, going down to the coffee shop every now and again, and fuck it, on a Friday, if I want to have a donut with my coffee, I'm going to do it, because I only live once. It's so important to keep sight of what this is to you and not let it completely consume your world. So I mean, I hope, hopefully that can kind of resonate with people.
And like you say, they're different cuisines and things. I always, you know, now I take those opportunities. Like, I'd rather go for a meal that's going to be like, you know, something that I maybe haven't tried before, or a cuisine I really like I really like Thai food, which
me too.
And I only got welcome to Thai food in this part, the off season that I just went through. And actually, Ryan and I always talk about it, we're like, this is actually quite clean, you know, like, it's not,
you can keep really clean.
it's, you know, it's protein because you got your chicken, your prawns, all these different things, and then you got your rice or your noodles, and then you got loads of veggies, and you're like, oh, okay. And actually you feel okay. Whereas personally, if I have something like Chinese, my gut's like, it's just, you know, I'm in bits and I feel really ill, you know, the stuff they put in it, and you think, oh and like all night you wake up and you're like, I can't, you know, hardly swallow because my mouth is so dry. So again, it's in your off season, learning what food you tolerate. And if you do, I'm not going to call it a mistake, but if you have a food that doesn't sit well, just don't do it again. You know, see it for what it is. Okay, that food doesn't agree with me, I'm not going to have it again. If you get invited for that type of cuisine, speak to your friends, speak to the people you're going with, learn yourself, you know, use your off season to experiment a little bit. You don't need to go OTT, but, and also, you know, again, off the back of a show, the sort of binge eating behavior, try not to go to those depths of eating until you feel sick, until you know, you're really uncomfortable. Try and learn, you know, where your threshold is. I mean, my threshold is quite high, so that can be that can be a little bit counterproductive, but you know,
exactly, 1 or 2 days off here or there, it's not going to hurt you. But you know, when that becomes a week and it starts to spill over and you start to kind of not get back to a healthy, normal pattern of eating, it can be quite detrimental. So it's just keeping things into perspective. And, you know, remembering that the off season is there to be enjoyed, to work hard, to be focused on whatever goal orientated sort of things you're doing in that period, and not losing sight of good, healthy balance and lifestyle as well.
Yeah, and who you are, you know, remember that you do have a name. You're not just Sarah or Steff bodybuilder.
Yeah, exactly.
There's time and a place for that. In prep, but you know, off season, just try and allow yourself to have those periods of enjoyment and, you know, see it as something positive rather than isolating yourself so much that you end up missing out on potentially creating all of those memories that are available to us all.
Yeah, just like we always say, own the prep, you know, own the post show, own the off season, take a mature response to it. And then when you start to like feel a bit, remind yourself what this is about, shift the mindset, strong, empowered, physically strong, mentally strong. This is the next phase to just, put everything into training and having a good time, having fun in the gym, getting back to that, because the likelihood is at the end of your prep, gym wasn't fun. So
you're literally like, when am I on stage? I can't really function right now. But there is elements of that that's normal. But
I've lost count of how many of my clients have said, oh my God, like gym's just now a tick box exercise. We all who love, you've probably got into this because you love training. You want to get back to loving training, and the food helps you do that. The body weight helps you do that. The changing the mindset and planting seeds of like strong rather than lean is a really good thing. So just like you apply exactly what you said, just like you apply the energy to the prep, it's now time to switch and apply positive, good kind of wholesome energy to the prep. To the off season. It's really important.
Yeah. And something I think would be quite a good thing to finish on. Let's finish on a light note today. Yeah. I've got a prep and an off-season wardrobe now. This really helped. Like, it legit helps me to just, like you said earlier about big oversized tees, like in off-season I'm like rocking all the sort of like large XL t-shirts and jumpers, and like if I try and squeeze into things that when I'm lean, when I'm in the height of my off season, it doesn't lend itself well to my psychological health. So
I know, exactly.
Think of things like that. Just try and have a bit of fun with it, see it for what it is, and embrace all of those phases.
Absolutely. And there ain't nothing wrong with a small wardrobe and a big wardrobe.
Do it.
Yeah, exactly.
If anyone listening did, resonate with anything in particular or wanted to reach out to either of us, then we're more than happy for you to send us a DM on Instagram or whatever's easiest to offer that support, because it's really important for us doing the podcast and just, building those relationships with people. So if anyone wants to reach out, then you can hit us up on Instagram. And of course, if you can comment on the podcast and any topic ideas, which obviously today came from one of the
today was from Heather. Thanks, Heather. This was an awesome idea. So I hope this has helped you.
Yeah, and any more of those, we are more than open to suggestions. So we'd love to hear from you guys.
Awesome. Yes, drop comments below. And as always, till the next time.
Share. See you later, Steff.
Thanks, Sarah.